The first 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings of Power have dropped on Amazon Prime, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your initial thoughts on The Lord of the Rings of Power. This will be essentially a spoiler-free review, so please put spoiler warnings down below in the comment section if you want to talk about specific spoilers, specific things that happen in the episode. Little bit of background about me when it comes to Lord of the Rings. I've never been a big Lord of the Rings fan. I mean, I've read The Hobbit, I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and of course I've seen all of the films many times, but this hasn't been one of the fantasy realms that has been one of my go-to things, the way that I get all in with Star Wars, the way that I'm super into the MCU, DC. I've never been that way about Lord of the Rings. They're just enjoyable stories that I've had fun with, but they've never drawn the big emotions out of me that they've drawn out of many of you. So when I go into a show like this, I don't have an extensive knowledge of the lore. I'm not that guy. I don't have a big emotional investment in the canon, and I wouldn't even know if they were betraying the canon. And so this is a show that, because I like fantasy and I like these big sweeping franchise series, of course I wanted to check it out, but I'm not going in with the either skepticism or cynicism that many of you have, or the excitement that a bunch of you have. I'm just someone that loves things like this, so I'm checking it out. Take it as just that. And let's get started. And the first couple episodes for me were decent. I mean, the production values here are absolutely insane. It's crazy that we've reached a point in time that this can be released as television, that it looks this good, that it's this massive in scope and size. And yeah, it's just a television show doing week-to-week episodes with $1 billion budget. I mean, it's just insane how much money they went into this, and it looks like that. There's so many different locations with massive sets, incredible looking props, immaculate visuals for a television show. I mean, it's crazy. It's especially at my age, where this sort of thing would have been incredible for a movie, or was incredible when it was a trilogy of movies 20 years ago. And now it's like, yeah, week to week television. Sometimes we just spend $1 billion to adapt a television show. But the thing that makes that so weird is that it doesn't feel like the story and characters quite match the production here. They're like in this tricky spot where they want to do a Lord of the Rings TV series without being able to actually adapt the Lord of the Rings, and knowing that if you did an actual direct adaptation of the Lord of the Rings, you're just going to be compared to something that is so beloved. There's just not enough room there to improve upon. So you don't want to do that. So you have to do something new, but that means they're just trying to find a way in this prequel series to have all of the beats and the energy that the Lord of the Rings story has without it being the exact same thing. But what that turns into is, once again, there's this looming sense of doom and danger returning. It's a lot of similar villains names are being thrown out there. Certain characters are still in play. Themes about long friendships and the bonds that pull people together. Just a lot of similar things. We can't have hobbits, so we have our own new version of hobbits. So it's doing like Lord of the Rings Light as a TV show, or a remix of the Lord of the Rings. So it can't be too close, but it has to be really close so we don't make people mad and we deliver the experience that they want. That's what this has kind of felt like to me. And as someone that isn't the biggest Lord of the Rings fan, the version that is the classic, that is beloved, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but it's never really moved me as much as it's moved many of you. Seeing the non-Tolkien version of it, the let's try to do it without being able to do it version, it means it just doesn't quite hit as well. Likewise, because you're stretching it out of a whole season, it also feels a little bit stretched out a bit, where it's taken a bit too long to kind of get going. It's the nature of a TV show where you have a lot of different moving parts and a lot of characters in different locations. It's the nature of, if you're going to do Lord of the Rings and you're going to do a television show version of it, it's going to be pretty vast. But you get 2 episodes in, and there's a lot of building intrigue and a lot of like, okay, looming danger, something's coming, who's that guy, what's going on with this? But it doesn't feel like it's kind of kicked into motion yet. A lot of teases of where it might do that, but it hasn't happened quite yet, and the episodes are a full hour in length, so we're an hour into it. Doesn't feel like we're quite going yet. Other things that just struck me as just very odd. As the very casual Lord of the Rings fan, the version of Galadriel just doesn't, even to me, as someone that's not like tied to the lore, just has watched the movies many times, been like, this feels like a totally different character. This does not in any way feel like the younger version of who we saw before. Just seems like you wanted to have a strong female protagonist who's a familiar name. There, yeah, she was Xena Warrior Princess back when she was younger. She was out for revenge, like this deep personal vendetta against the main villain in Lord of the Rings. But, you know, she doesn't have any of that vibe in Lord of the Rings. It's this whole backstory. It just felt like, why didn't you just create a new character? Why are you doing this with this other person? Like, if I didn't know they were the same character, I never would think these are the same person, because they are not in any way, based off characterization and behavior and attitude towards certain situations, the same character. Just odd to me as kind of a normie, as a totally casual Lord of the Rings fan. And even the way they've kind of presented her character, her early scenes, she just comes off devoid of any compassion, just so obsessed with this singular mission. And I don't know, it just makes her seem very distant, because she is distant from everyone around her. No one around her seems to like her and trust her anymore. Therefore, it's difficult for us as the audience to do so. Even though we can kind of assume that she's probably right about things that they're wrong about, the way she's behaving is just burning every bridge. Thus, she comes off as this character that's kind of at arm's length. Without wanting to go into too many specifics, probably the plot line or characters I kind of connected with the most was in episode 2, where they have the elf-dwarf plot that kind of goes on there, where you just feel a sense of history between the characters and bond and hurt feelings, and there's just kind of a lot of stuff going on there. That was probably the bit for me throughout these 2 episodes that I resonated with the most. And I just think that when you have a show with this many characters, this many plot lines, this grand of scope and size, it just takes a little bit to get invested in it. As a point of reference also, it took me multiple viewings of Game of Thrones to be able to get through the 2nd season, because it took so long for me to connect with that show, because it was so many characters in so many different locations that I needed a large investment to really get it and click with it. And I imagine that'll be the same with this show, where similarly, a lot of characters, a lot of locations, big, sweeping, epic threat, sense of looming doom. It takes a while to get fully invested in that when you only get a few minutes here and there before we have to move on to the next character, establish the next piece of lore, give more exposition, move a different plot forward. There's just a lot kind of going on here. And maybe, I don't know if I would say it's unfocused, because like you kind of know that it's establishing a lot of plot lines that will come together. You can kind of see how they will. But we are in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things, and only taking small steps with each of them forward 2 episodes in. So once again, using that Game of Thrones point of reference, I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes of House of the Dragon that debuted just a couple weeks back. This one I'm a little bit more on the fence on. Both have amazing production values. Both are fantasy, 2 different versions of fantasy, but definitely have preferred House of the Dragon to the first 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings, and got more invested much quicker in Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, than I did in Rings of Power. So, wasn't bad, but as I said earlier, it just doesn't feel like the story, the mythology, the characters they have in these first 2 episodes are worthy of the insane budget that they gave to it. Seems like they probably should have kicked off with something a little bit flashier, more exciting, something that hooks you a little bit quicker, that's just kind of like right out of the gate, you're like, whoa, that just happened. And you're a couple episodes in, and that isn't what they've done. Even the action that they've done with like Galadriel is just very quick in the way that it played out. And seems like that could have been something maybe stretched out, made it more interesting, had a little bit more of a payoff to the quest that she was on, instead of just kind of playing it the way they did. So I don't know. I think there's definitely some room for improvement here. There's some things to enjoy. I'm interested enough. I'll be back next week to check it out. But like I said, still on the fence at this point in time. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Are you a Tolkien fanatic? Are you someone that knows all the canon, has read the Silmarillion? Are you kind of like me? Yeah, you read the books at some point in time, you've seen the movies many times, but you're just much more of a normie. You're a casual viewer, not the fanatic. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your point of reference down below in the comment section, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.